Okay, so this morning I'm in Lambourne with Mick Fitzgerald, a familiar face to many.
Well, welcome to my humble abode.
Well, thanks for inviting me. You've been in the game all your life.
Yeah.
Starting with pony racing, a jockey for 20 odd years.
Yeah, I never actually did any pony racing. There's no pony racing for me. I had to learn on the fly, and I think that's why I was so bad when I started. And you know, do you know what? I think a lot of the lads that start off now are at a disadvantage compared to what we were, because nobody really noticed how bad you were until you got noticed, and then you had a chance to actually be better because of all the mistakes you'd made previously. Whereas now with Sky Sports Racing, with Racing TV, every race is televised, so every time somebody has a ride, somebody's got a microscope on them. Whereas for us, like, I was rubbish when I started, but I learned from the mistakes I made and I got better. So by the time people actually started to notice me, I'd had like over 100 rides. And if you've got that much experience, it makes a huge difference.
So where did I get the pony racing from then?
No idea.
Oh,
Wasn't me. Wasn't me.
So now you're a TV presenter.
Yeah.
And you've been a TV presenter for probably as long now, almost, as you were a jockey.
Yeah.
So was it the sport or the horse originally that attracted you to what you do?
The horse. It's always been the horse for me. Like I lived in a town. Lived in Killarney for many years. Then we moved back to Wexford. My dad's family are from Wexford, and one of the lures was that they would buy us a pony. So I've got an older brother and a younger sister. So we shared the pony. And it basically went from there. My dad's a mechanic, and my mum was a cleaning lady in a pub. So, you know, I had no racing background at all. My dad used to fix cars, but he used to do little nixer jobs in the evening to help pay for the ponies. And I got noticed riding a pony one day, and then one of the lads that was getting his car fixed said, "Oh, we're actually looking for somebody to help out at the local racing stables. Do you think your son would like a job?" And my dad asked me, and I said, "Oh, well, yeah, okay." My mum was mad keen on racing, my dad not so much so. Off I went. I was 13 at the time, and I rode my first racehorse that morning, and it changed my life forever, because the thrill that I got from that 40 seconds up that gallop was like nothing I'd ever experienced. And I thought, this is like being in control of that much power. Just felt like something that I wanted to do. So from then on, like, I've always just, like, horses have been my saviour, really.
That's my excuse. I've read about the ponies. I must have just assumed that you were racing them,
Yeah.
because what else would you do with a pony in my mind? But that was
Yeah, I was doing local gymkhanas and show jumping, and I had a pretty shit time of it at school, really. But the one thing that always stayed constant was the horses. And horses don't judge you by, you know, if you've got a disability, what colour you are. They don't care. You know, as long as you're nice to them and look after them, they're nice to you. And like, that was the one thing that I found, that no matter what else was going on in life, the horses were always pleased to see you, and they were always constant. And that's what I loved about them.
Right, now, one of the questions is about your childhood, which
Yeah.
we'll come on to later. Before we do all that, it's going to be a bit back to front. But one thing that's always struck me about you, and I know you to say hello to, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know you appear to be a man that wears your heart on your sleeve.
Yeah.
If something got your goat, or if you're upset, you're quite happy to express that on the TV. What worries you about the racing game at the moment?
Well, the biggest thing that worries me is that, you know, where the new owner's coming, you know, I think that has to be the key. We have to make sure that the people that are providing the entertainment, i.e. supplying the horses that, you know, we can enjoy watching race, you know, they need to be looked after, and it can't just be a loss leading exercise like it is at the moment. Like, you can't. I would dearly love to see racing that if a horse wins 2 races in a year, it pays its training fees. Now, the harsh reality of that is to have a horse in training, it costs 25 grand a year. So you don't need to be great at maths to work out that you need to win 2 pretty big races to cover 25 grand a year. So there is not many people in this business who are actually making money from having racehorses in training. So, you know, that something has to give, and there has to be more money coming back for the people that are having winners. And, you know, where's that money going to come from? You know, I think they have to be very careful that they look after the people who are actually providing the entertainment.
Yeah, because racing would have to have a plan B if what looks like is going to happen to the bookmaking industry.
Yeah. You can't rely on the bookmakers to be the sole providers of it all. You know, like there's a lot of people who are involved in this sport. There's a lot of people who gain employment from this sport, and there's a lot of people who love the sport. You know, so we have to try and find a happy medium between everybody, so that the people who are actually funding the mechanism, almost like the owners, that they actually feel like they're getting a fair deal. So, you know, it's not just about, you know, the person who are paying to come in and watch, like the spectators, you know, the race goers. They have to be looked after as well, but they have to make sure that they look after the people who own the horses.
And the jockeys are having a bit of a bad time at the moment as well.
Yeah, that's a bit of a hot topic at the moment. The whip rules have been probably at the heart of a lot of the grumbles at the moment. Look, I understand that the sport is under pressure from outside interests, and this is something that I think people have to be aware of. We all saw what happened at the Grand National. We all saw that there's some people who don't like racing, who want racing banned, and we have to be on the front foot with that and say, look, we're doing everything that we can to make it as safe as we possibly can without taking away from what is the thrill of the sport. We have to be careful of that. So I think one of the big things was that in the Labour manifesto, one of the things that they were going to get rid of was the whip in racing. So suddenly I think a lot of people thought, right, okay, we have to do something about this. Hence the reason they got on the front foot and they said, right, we're going to have to change the way the whip rules are laid out. They had a steering committee. I'm not sure that did as good a job as they wanted it to do. But the end result was that we had a whip reform. And basically they said, right, okay, the whip reform is that we're going to only use it in the backhand position. Now, when they tried that and they trialed it and they had 2 weeks of grace almost, where jockeys were able to try it, and then they were brought in and showed how that would play out in the stewardship. And a lot of them were picking up bans, which were only in theory bans because it was a trial period. And they said, this is not workable, we can't work with it. So a lot of people got behind the scenes, worked really hard to try and get it going. Ryan Moore was actually brilliant for a lot of the lads in this. You know, like Ryan sometimes gets a little bit of stick because he doesn't say much when he's on TV, but actually he really cares about what happens to the riders. And, you know, he did a lot of stuff off his own back to try and help. And ultimately they got it changed around. So they got the forehand position back, but it just meant that they lost one. So instead of it being 7 strikes, being 8 strikes, it was 7. And also then for the flat lads, they lost 1 as well. The problem that they have, and I think that the key thing in all of this is the above shoulder height, the hitting them, you know, out of sync, you know, like not giving a horse enough time to respond. A lot of jockeys have been picking up bans for stuff like that. Like the above shoulder height thing, I think is really tough to police. If you see it coming from up here, it's horrendous. Then you have to expect a ban. But if it's here and just here, and it's like you're talking inches, is it really that bad? Does the man on the street actually think, ooh, that's terrible? He only used his whip 3 times, but the 3 times he used it, it was just over. And then he's going to get, 8 days for that? It's lunacy. You know, they should actually, I think, not be as sticky and as picky on stuff like that, because if somebody watches it and thinks that's terrible, it is terrible. If somebody watches and doesn't even notice, really, does that mean that that jockey should be banned? You know, I think that's where they have to be careful, and where, you know, the jockeys are up in arms a lot about this, because a lot of them are picking up bans and they're not really, you know, understanding why, because very often they feel they haven't gone over. But at the same time, if the number is 7 and you hit a horse 9 times, you deserve to be done. You should be able to count. And that's where I think that you have the discrepancy. If somebody is over and they know they're over, and what I don't want to hear is somebody saying, oh, but it was running on. No, the number is 7. If you hit it 8 or you hit it 9, you're going to get done. You can't say, oh, but it was running on. That doesn't work. So I think, you know, I think the number thing is fine, but I think the above shoulder height and hitting them, you know, like a few of the lads have been done for this thing that they call double tapping. If you're watching it in slow motion trying to work out, was that a double hit, and you can't really tell, well, then it's not. So I think that's where they've got to be a little bit careful.
Now, you mentioned the man on the street there.
Yeah.
The average man on the street's not even watching, is he? Because even though it's the second most popular sport, still most people aren't interested in horse racing, whether we in it like it or not. So do you think they're being, people that don't watch it are being pandered to too much?
I think there's a fine line to be drawn here. You know, there's a lot of people who are trying to attract new people into the sport. That's, I think, great, because if you get more people in, yes, it increases everything. But I think you can't cater too much for people who aren't really that bothered. So I think you've got to be careful there as well. You've got to look after the people who are really interested, your core audience. They're the ones that you have to really be interested in. But you also have to be aware that when outside influences look in at our sport, they have to like what they see. And I think we cannot ignore that.
And obviously the Grand National is an extreme case because it is a unique race.
Yeah.
And those people trying to climb the fence at Aintree this year, you're never going to change their minds.
No. Well, so they want to live in a society where animals roam free, and we live in a plant-based diet world. Well, that's not for me. You know, I like my meat and I'm quite happy to eat it. So I'm all for everybody doing their own thing. You've got to allow people the opportunity for peaceful protest. That's fine. If somebody wants to stand outside with a placard, you know, alerting you to something that they don't like, that is their right, and you have to give them that right. But when it boils down to what they were trying to do at the Grand National, that's wrong, because a lot of those horses got upset before the National, and, you know, you cannot say that it was the sole reason, but it was definitely a contributing factor. You know, there's so much at stake in a race like the Grand National for everybody involved, and it was just a shame that it was ruined by a few people who were trying to, you know, get themselves noticed. I think, like you say, peaceful protest is everybody's right, and they deserve to have that right. But I think when it boils down to something like that, what they were trying to do, I don't think that was very fair.